Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. So I have said a number of times on this show, the most interesting weeks in the Hot 100, they're not those for the album bombs, but the weeks right after, where things seem to reset to some form of equilibrium and the charts seem to regain some sort of stability, for better or for worse. And in the week following two album bomb weeks in a row, you would expect the recovery to be a little more pronounced, and then Childish Gambino unleashed This Is America. And unsurprisingly, that's the much bigger story to discuss later on in the show, but make no mistake, we're going to be talking about it at length, albeit with more of a focus on the song than the video directly, as you would expect for a show talking about the Hot 100. But you know what? It's impossible to ignore the video, because when we look at the top 10, the reason why This Is America surged to take number one was directly linked to how viral it went on YouTube, and then scrutinized and analyzed from every single angle, as it should be for the record, as such loaded and transgressive art demands more analysis, especially considering the artistic ambiguities that Childish Gambino was introducing. But if you look at the numbers, it was no question. The sales, the YouTube margins, they crushed everything in their path. So despite no airplay and slightly less impressive on-demand streaming, This Is America debuted at number one. A massive first for Childish Gambino and for music with more of a political edge, which rarely ever breaks the Hot 100, let alone hitting number one. Now, virality can fade pretty fast though, so I do expect Nice for What by Drake to reclaim the top spot pretty soon. For now, it's at number two thanks to big airplay pickups, huge streaming, and slightly weaker sales than you would expect. As I've said before, it was never going to be a dominant number one. I'm not surprised it got unseated, because for now we've got Childish Gambino on top, but for how long is an open question. Then at number three, we've got God's Plan by Drake. Thanks to huge streaming, it's going to fade out gracefully, especially as airplay is definitely on the decline, but still enough to put it above Psycho by Post Malone and Ty Dolla $ign, falling to number four as the album bomb fades away. Although, given its sales pickups and considerable radio growth, I would probably expect this to stick around in the top 10 for another few weeks. Hell, a push back Meant to Be by Bhabie Rexha featuring Florida Georgia Line down to number 5. And it looks like with sales and radio dropping, it's finally on its way out. Thank God. Hell, its top spot on the radio was usurped by The Middle by Zedd, Maren Morrison, Grey at number 6, which also looks to be fading for many of the same reasons. While what's not fading is Look Alive by Block Boy JB featuring Drake up to number 7. Although likely not for long, given that it peaked on the radio this week and any streaming rebound will not last for that much longer. Then we've got Never Be the Same by Camila Cabello down to number 8, with the sales falling off hard even as the radio momentum kinda wavers. This one kinda tough to predict, but I don't really see it lasting long in the top 10. And it's a similar case for Perfect by Ed Sheeran re-entering the top 10 at number 9. It's really just here to fill up space because it's a big enough radio presence to last after an album bomb. Nothing more, nothing less. And finally, we've got No Tears Left to Cry by Ariana Grande, clinging on to another week at number 10, which is quietly becoming a real presence on the radio with stable streaming even as the sales fade back a little bit. Again, I'm thinking this might stick around in the top 10. It'll be interesting to see if that radio winds up getting even bigger when the album finally drops. But on a different note, our losers and dropouts, and really there's very little to say here, with the only one of any size in the latter category being Candy Paint by Post Malone. Yes, I expected it, doesn't mean I'm pleased about it. But Post Malone lost a lot this week across the board, so let's blow through this quickly. Better Now fell to 23, Paranoid went to 38, Rich and Sad went to 39, Ball For Me with Nicki Minaj went to 40, Stay lost down to 45, Spoil My Night with Sway Lee faded to 51, Zack and Codeine skidded to 63, Over Now dropped to 64, Same Bitches with G-Eazy and YG lost out to 66, Taking Shots drained to 67, 92 Explorer crashed at 69, Other Side faded to 89, and Blame It On Me hit 93. Hell, beyond that, the only other losers we had were Famous by Mason Ramsey falling to 95 as the meme loses traction, ATM by J. Cole continuing down to 56, and sadly, Say Something by Justin Timberlake featuring Chris Stapleton down at 88. And as much as I want that song to succeed, it only has 5 weeks left to rack up the points. And with this sort of downward momentum, I would not put money on making the year-end list for 2018. Yes, I'm disappointed. But as always, where things get the most interesting come in the returning entries and our gains. And let's get the expected rebounds for Nicki Minaj out of the way first. Barbie Tings returned at 84, but Chun-Li blew up big to 19, riding some considerable streaming and some real radio traction. Now granted, if you're looking for bigger gains in that department, Booed Up by LMA continues to be a presence across the board as it surges up to 17. And on that note of continued momentum, we also had Dura by Daddy Yankee up to 43 thanks to YouTube, which you could also probably blame for the growth of Tebote up to 41. Gross. But of course, in the wake of an album bomb fading, you need to look at what's taking its place, with the most obvious candidates being hip-hop songs being pushed back and regaining their ground on streaming, which is why Sad by XXXTentacion rebounded big to 34. On the plus side, we also saw All the Stars by Kendrick Lamar and SZA, and I'm not going to complain about Power Glide by Ray Shrimmer and Juicy J picking up to 28. It's really the only success the duo got from that triple album strategy, so yeah, not a good sign for them long term. Hell, I'd probably argue YoungBoy Never Broke Again had more success with Overdose picking up off the debut last week to 47. More on him in a bit when we talk about the new arrivals. Then we got the country songs that were muscled back by sheer position volume, and they were making their returns. One Number Away by Luke Combs up to 44, Tequila by Dan and Shay up to 55, Up Down by Morgan Wallen and Florida Georgia Line to 71, For the First Time by Darius Rucker to 76, and Kenny Chesney netting 2 pickups with Get Along up to 70, and Everything's Gonna Be Alright with David Lee Murphy up to 87. And finally, we got the scattered mid-tier tunes that might not become hits in the long term, but they had enough of a recovery regardless. X by Nicky Jam and J Balvin up, One Kiss by Calvin Harris and Dua Lipa, and to my shock, Delicate by Taylor Swift. Again, I don't really expect it to be a hit, but there is kind of a part of me that wants it to be. I do like that song. But again, that's not what you're here for. Let's get into our new arrivals. Starting off with number 98, Preach by YoungBoy Never Broke Again.
So I'm done with these bitches. I think about it every minute, ain't stopping my mission. On my payroll, I got hitters, I pay them commission. Interrogated by detectives, won't tell them I did it. I told Montana that I love him, on Dave, I meant it. Put 20,000 on his head, they catching my senate. Get on my knees on side the bed like Father, forgive me.
So it doesn't look like YoungBoy Never Broke Again is gonna get his album bomb proper in the wake of Post Malone. But hey, he got another track to chart from very early on his new album, and honestly, I can almost see the appeal of this song. The oily organs playing against the rumbling bass, the production that's got enough ragged gloss to hold up under the flows where he rambles through those who have double-crossed him and betrayed him, and the pressing weight on his psyche which caused him to be so violent, until we get the hook where he opens up his first line with a Jamaican slur for gay men. And when you pair it with really underwhelming flows, repeatedly rhyming words with themselves, some of the most egregious forced rhyming with heroin that I've heard on any song, and a lack of any sort of decent hook, why should I care about this guy again? This is not that interesting to redeem that. Number 97, Mercy by Brett Young.
Make this fast. If you ever love me, have mercy.
So this is the 4th single from Brett Young's self-titled debut album that I've covered on the show, and look, for as much as I tolerated his early singles, I haven't exactly been impressed by what he's released since, so I wasn't exactly excited for this, and when you make it a pretty bare-bones piano ballad about ending a relationship with Young just asking for her to end it already and show him some mercy there, well, credit where taking the mature route, I guess, but I do think the song is a little bit oversold, especially with some of the synth touches in the background and Brett Young trying to bring a gruffness to his delivery that just doesn't quite fit with the veneer of the song. It just feels a little bit more sour than it should. Yeah, okay, the acoustic guitar playing counterpoint to the piano, it sounds fine. I definitely consider this a better cut coming from Brett Young in comparison with his last 2 singles. It's definitely a good song, but I wouldn't really call it a great one. And given a lot of its tone and lack of real explosive moment, I can't see this sticking around on country radio for long. Just saying. Number 80, Gucci Flip-Flops by Bhad Baby featuring Lil Yachty.
Give it to they pussy ass, turn this shit up a notch. Gucci flip-flops, make it kick rocks. It's a big clock, check the wristwatch. Gucci flip-flops, fuck it, hit your bitch and massage. This a big watch, diamonds dripping off of the clock.
Alright, honest question, why is hip-hop still giving Danielle Bregoli any airtime or attention? Her star very much peaked last year, and the most interesting that's happened to her since is Eric Taxon remixing High Vic into Lost Lander. So for her to hop on a song with Lil Yachty with a title that's a future reference from 3 years ago, am I supposed to care about this at all? All this song really proves that we can finally find somebody that Lil Yachty can out-rap over this flat synth tune and surprisingly aggressive bass beat. Yeah, his verse is pretty formless and forgettable, but at least has something of a stable flow, which is something that I cannot say about Bhad Bhabie's oddly disjointed verse and hook. And what's all the more exasperating is that at least she could bring a punchline or two to the table before on earlier songs. Here, the clumsy structure of her non-rhymes leaves her scrabbling for the most basic references, and it's just kind of forgettable and really mediocre at the end. So yeah, not good. Next, number 74, Done For Me by Charlie Puth featuring Kehlani.
Cry for you, baby, but tell me what you've done for me. For you, baby, and only you, baby. The things I do, baby, but tell me what you've done for me.
So I don't expect there to be an album bomb for Charlie Puth. He's not big enough on streaming to notch multiple songs there, which means that this track is being pushed as a single. And as I mentioned when I reviewed Voice Notes yesterday, it's arguably his best one yet. Glossy synths playing against a watery but sharp bass groove that kicks into a deliberately retro R&B vibe, Charlie Puth tightening up his multi-tracking to compensate for his willowy falsetto, and having a surprising amount of chemistry with Kehlani on a pretty chilly song. And for a nice change of pace, the lyrics actually do some heavy lifting here. Puth doesn't directly accuse her of cheating, but the implication's definitely there, and Kehlani is having none of it, clapping back hard to show that she's gone above and beyond for him here. And what has he really done? I mean, I do wish the bridge had delved a little bit deeper into that follow-up to really show where this couple could go. My guess is a breakup sooner rather than later, but regardless, for this type of pop R&B jam, it's a pretty sharp song. Definitely check it out. It's good stuff. Number 65, Youth by Shawn Mendes featuring Khalid.
As long as I wake up today, you can't take my youth away. You can't take my youth away. The soul of mine will never break. As long as I wake up today, you can't take my youth away. You can't take my youth away.
So okay, thus far Shawn Mendes has been taking steps in the right direction for his upcoming new album, which of course I'm going to be covering on this show. You'd think I'd miss out on any chance to deal with the Mendes army again after Illuminate in 2016, and thus I had some reasonably high hopes for this song, and yeah, most of them were rewarded because this is pretty damn solid. For an interesting change of pace, Shawn Mendes and Khalid are looking to address the current string of violence directed at kids like in Manchester, with the declaration that their spirits will not be broken. And what I found most interesting was the second verse, where Khalid references words delivered by someone to him that lowers his spirits, a larger metaphor for the lingering message of terrorism, or perhaps more literal, referring to those seeking to shove down the younger generation from authority figures that they never dreamed would be directing those words at them for potentially speaking out. Either way, it's a good fit for the darker acoustics building behind the thrumming low-end swell behind the hook. Enough there, I do wish the hook actually could cut a little bit loose, a little harder. Maybe show Khalid and Shawn Mendes step into a more raw upper register to really sell this song. But as it is, it builds some pretty impressive simmer, but both Shawn Mendes and Khalid have been really unwilling in their recent work to really step out of their comfort zone, and while the song is definitely in the right direction, I can't help but feel like it could have been a little stronger, hit a little harder. It's a good track, but it could have been great. Number 58, Beautiful Crazy by Luke Combs.
She can't help but amaze me. The way that she dances, ain't afraid to take chances, and wears her heart on her sleeve. Yeah, she's crazy, but her crazy's beautiful to me.
So I'll freely admit I have no idea why artists re-release albums. If you're just gonna slap on a few more tracks, put together an EP, be done with it. Unless you're just looking to reuse promotional material, it's just exasperating to pull this crap. Anyway, Beautiful Crazy is a cut from the re-release of Luke Combs' debut from last year, and honestly the song's fine enough, although I seriously question why Luke Combs is calling this girl crazy when the most I'd really describe her as impulsive and honest, which really isn't all that unsurprising for a woman in country. But really, the song songwriting is pretty peripheral to the production here, which I'd argue is some of the most organic neo-traditional country that I've heard in the Hot 100 in a long time. You have fiddles, you have pedal steel, warm acoustic guitar, a genuinely rich melody. Just the tone of the song matched against Luke Combs' gravelly delivery is a really damn solid fit. Folks who always seem so confused about this, you want to know what country can sound like in the mainstream? Prime example, it sounds great here. I mean, shame the writing isn't better, but overall this is solid, and with those sales, I can only hope country radio gets on board, because this is definitely worth it. Number 16, Watch by Travis Scott featuring Lil Uzi Vert and Kanye West.
Big face, she can't see my room, fuck her in the hallway. Getting bored with this money, count it all day.
Okay, let's be brutally honest. The only reason this charted as highly as it did was Kanye West's presence. I mean, sure, Travis Scott is a big enough following now to notch solid hits of his own, and this being a lead-off single, you'd expect it, but nobody's coming to a song for a Lil Uzi Vert feature. The story here is Kanye. I mean, it sure as hell is not the production, which wedges in an overblown staccato horn line that doesn't match with anybody's flow, at least until the thicker tide of gleaming synth rushes in, and it doesn't do remotely enough in order to save the song, at least from a production standpoint. But again, let's be real, the content here, at least coming from Lil Uzi Vert and Travis Scott, is just by the numbers flexing. Lots of luxury watches, accusing people of having fake diamonds in their watches, doing drugs, and of course screwing your girl. And then Kanye shows up, and yeah, his flow is better than on Ye versus the People, but is that really saying much as he rambles about how trapped he feels, and how everyone wants him to run in place, and how nobody should trust a bartender who doesn't drink, a larger metaphor for not trusting someone to serve knowledge to him who just isn't on his level? Okay, dude, just stop. We saw with your Twitter rampage what you think being on your level really is, devoid of any coherent facts or any sense of greater self-awareness surrounding the impact of your words. And maybe a messy trap banger isn't the best place to plug how you are freeing your mind when so much of the song is just meat-headed flexing anyways. And maybe it's a bad idea to equate your greater enlightenment with being drunk off your ass, which is really just a different strain of depressant compared to the opioids you mention on your verse, so your metaphor might be more unintentionally revealing than you realize. But no, this is a messy song, really just a bad choice for a lead-off single from Travis Scott's next album, so let's move on to the main event. Number 1, This Is America by Childish Gambino.
Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now.
So if you've been on the internet at all in the past couple weeks, you've likely seen the video for this song. Hell, you've probably seen it multiple times and then watched at least 2 analysis videos or reaction videos or memes of the more striking image. And it makes little to no sense for me to step in and retrace a lot of that ground. It's been done better elsewhere. Now, for me personally, what's most striking is the abruptness of the violence juxtaposed with the sunnier elements. All the dancing, the gentler guitars, all abruptly sliced to bloody ribbons against the grinding trap groove with more textured drums and the eerie wells of synth both through expert editing and a sudden blast of carnage that just as quickly are left aside. And that's one thing that makes the video so damn unsettling. The focus shifts so quickly that your mind isn't allowed to really focus on the horror you just witnessed, or just see it in the background like those falling to their deaths, or the horse integrating revelations and iconography of death and apocalypse, with kids on their phones on high at a distance capturing the violence through another layer of passive detachment. And this emotional discordance is what makes the video so damn powerful and so damn gripping on a fundamental level. Simply for as much as Childish Gambino was able to cram into the background and the loaded iconography playing into the psychological scarring of this black experience in America, and I hate to say it, but I don't quite think the song hits quite as hard. Now, the most glaring absence here is the gunshots to trigger those transitions. Even as a percussion element, they could accentuate that jagged shift. I have no idea why they were left out, but without the video flush with detail, it's hard not to feel like the trap-inspired verse felt a shade undercooked, especially the second verse that can feel barely on beat. And then there's the Kodak Black shout-out on that verse. Honestly, it fits for what Childish Gambino is looking to portray at that point of the song, but I do find it a lot more interesting that he brought on so many modern trap MCs for uncredited but very recognizable ad-libs. Less glorification of what they've done, but showing how complicit they really are. And that's one reason why the outro is genuinely haunting and what elevates elevates this song to greatness. For as much as the shouts for the black man to get his money ring before the hooks and that final outro, and might seem to highlight glorification of the path to success, the cost of getting that paper cast a ghoulish reflection across this song, especially on the outro, where Young Thug's off-kilter crooning highlights that said money just becomes beholden to the larger system that will then perpetuate a lot of this psychological damage. And that's one of the twisted things about this song. It takes a twisted parody of trap and uses it to deconstruct the genre in a way that renders any shallow banger that comes after it just part of the song's black hole of inescapable context, and you can't escape that. So in short, while I do think the song is at its most powerful when paired with the video, on its own doesn't quite hit as strongly, but in terms of sheer potency and intellectual heft and emotional heft, This Is America by Childish Gambino walks away with the best of the week. Although I will say that Done For Me by Charlie Puth and Kehlani is really close behind his honorable mention. Now the rest, honestly, was a pretty solid come-down week. A lot of good songs here, but worst is easily Gucci Flip-Flops by Bad Baby featuring Lil Yachty, with dishonorable mention going to Watch by Travis Scott featuring Lil Uzi Vert and Kanye West. Again, it was really close there, but that synth swell ultimately saved it a little bit. Next up, well, for once, I'm not quite sure what's going to come up next, but it'll be fascinating to see how much Childish Gambino's impact will last on the charts, so we'll see there. But until next time, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.